Good afternoon. So we're going to be doing something very, very different on this episode. I'm down here at the other shop with Greg. Greg is, among other things, a mini bike wizard. He knows everything about these small displacement engines. We're going to be modifying the CT200U. It already has a couple things in it. It's got a billet flywheel. Governor's been removed, but other than that, it's essentially stock as I got it a couple years ago. Bought this thing at TJ Maxx for like 350 bucks. They're tons of fun. If you haven't ridden one of these, you really should. They're just raw. They're how mini bikes used to be. No suspension, pneumatic tires. They're just great. So we're gonna get this thing inside the shop and get the motor torn down, and we got a billet rod to put in it. We're gonna tickle the head a little bit and do some other stuff, and we're going to do before and after measurements. So that's what we're actually gonna work on next. Greg's got some cones. We're gonna set the bike up and we're gonna do a little challenge and see how fast it goes. We'll probably do like what, 60 foot and a top speed or something like that. We just want to have a metric. So when I bought this, it would only do 26 miles an hour. After doing the billet flywheel and removing the governor, it'll do about 29-ish now. So we'll see A, if it'll still do 29, because that was a couple years ago, and B, we'll see if we can increase that at the end of the day after we've done all the modifications. So yeah, let's see how she rips. Well, that didn't take any time at all. These motors are super easy to take out. So there's a couple extra bolts. There's the jack shaft assembly on the side here. We just left it on the bike and didn't take any of that off. And then ground strap and then the kill wire. And that's pretty much it. Gas tank, carburetor, exhaust, everything comes with the engine. So we're gonna drain the engine oil out, pull the side cover off, start pulling some of these accessories off and get to it and start getting some parts on there. So do that next. All right, so motor's mostly torn down, party piece. So this was hiding underneath the cover. I put this on a little while ago. When you remove the governor on these, there's a little mechanism in here that when the motor revs out, it actually pulls the throttle close again and keeps the revolutions in check. So when you remove that, you have to do a billet flywheel. The cast flywheels actually explode when they get to a certain RPM. I've never seen it. I've seen videos. It's intense.
It's not something you want to mess with.
No, not at all. I mean, cast 7,000 RPM parts flying off is a terrible idea. So I did this a while back just to be a little safer. And then Greg was actually asking if I had an offset keyway also. I do have one. I physically own one. So what this does is this advances the entire flywheel, which means it advances the timing. And so, I don't know, we might put both of them on there and just throw a bunch of timing at this, but we'll have to see what the keyway looks like in the flywheel, because I kind of remember it being wallered out just a little bit. So we're gonna keep getting this thing torn down. All right, so we got the cylinder head off. Everything's actually nice and new and clean in here. This engine doesn't have a lot of miles, so it's really nice. Best way to get power on these is to increase compression. They start out at what?
Like 8.5 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's super, super low. They're meant to run at 3,900 RPM for hours and hours on shit gas. That's the entire point behind these engines. So one of the things we wanted to look at was the thickness of the head gaskets. This is one that I just had laying around from the, I think this actually came off the drift trike. And then we have this gasket. These are the same thickness. We measured these out. I also have a gasket kit that I ordered up. And so we wanted to make sure that everything's the same. And it turns out that everything comes out at what, 5 thou you said?
Yeah, so it's technically a 10 thou gasket. If you measure it crushed over the compression ring, it's 10,000. So as soon as I ganked the head off, first thing I checked was thickness of the gasket, because if it's a 40 thou gasket and we're putting a 10 thou back on, we're gonna get an instant increase in compression ratio, which is great. I'm all about it. But I was just curious to see what came in it. And it is the same gasket that we already have, which is the thinnest you can buy. So from here, if we wanted to increase compression ratio for free, we'd be milling down the cylinder head, which we might do a little bit, and we could also mill down the block as well. But at this point, we're still trying to stay on pump gas, so we're not going to be increasing the compression ratio much at all.
The other thing too with the compression ratio and either decking or milling the head in the block is that we only have these push rods. So I have another set of push rods, but on a push rod motor, you need to take into consideration that when you lower all of this down, if the push rods are too long, then you're going to run into interference because it's going to...
Yeah, your rocker arm geometry becomes incorrect. So basically, if you look at... I'll grab one of the rockers. So when you're talking about rocker arm geometry, you want to look at how the tip of the rocker contacts the valves at rest and at full lift. And when you lower the cylinder head down without shortening the push rod, it then lifts the rocker arm up and it'll start to ride on the nose of the rocker arm. And that's the nose of the rocker arm is not meant to handle that type of force. So you want to get the geometry to the same that it was when you pulled it apart.
Perfect. So all of these bits are from the drift trike that I just showed in the video there. All of this survived. That motor failed miserably. It had a bunch of really cool aftermarket parts. It had this ARC billet rod. I ordered new bearings for that. I ordered the tool for the little ARP rod bolts there. I'll show you a little bit more on this rod later when we get to install it. This is just some generic pipe I had laying around in a D-flange. I also have the carb off the old three-wheeler and then the adapter and the air filter housing and stuff. We're going to be putting these double springs on the cylinder head today with these nice billet aluminum retainers. We got the keepers here. Not sure on these push rods. We're going to check the length on these versus the other one. Again, not sure on these rocker arms. And then we got some pretty sweet flat face stainless valves. So might be able to church it up with some junk that I got laying around. And I got some racing plugs and stuff if we need them.
Basically, this build was sponsored by Keith's box of crap in his garage. It's basically what all that meant.
It's all just leftover shit. I got a gasket kit that I got some gaskets from. I got just junk laying around. So, but it's nice. This thing's been stock. My wife bought me this a couple years ago, like I said, at TJ Maxx, and it's been stock, and it's really fun. I mean, 30 miles an hour on something with only drum rear brakes, no suspension, and very little steering is plenty. But we're going to see if we can best that today. So,
hell yeah.
Back to it. Great news. Looking at the aftermarket valves that I have from the last engine, they're actually slightly longer than the valves that are in here. So this means that we're going to be able to deck this head. We're going to be able to take material off of this and keep the rocker arm geometry that Greg was talking about earlier. And the next thing we're going to do is just pull some bits off of this. We're going to do a valve job. This is what, just a simple 30 degree, or what do they normally do on these?
It's the only angle that's on these seats is the one that's required to seal, which is a 45-degree angle.
Okay.
So we're going to cut in more valves to promote the airflow and promote the air to bend around the valve.
Perfect.
That's the whole point of a.
And then probably a little hand port while you're in there too. Yeah. Maybe church it up just a bit. Right on. So, all right. Well, we're going to get to that and see if we can get this thing breathing a little bit better.
Basically, if you look in the bowl of the valve pocket, you'll see it's a nice sharp edge here, and a sharp edge here where the air has to flow through. And it's also a pretty small area. compared to your inlet area. So what I'm going to try to do is first of all even out this volume to match the volume up here, and then if I have some left, maybe I'll open up the whole area. I'm trying to get it all to match in size and make it as smooth as possible on both the intake and exhaust.
Nice, let's get to porting.
So we're just finished roughing out the ports on the cylinder head. I widened out a lot around the guides to give just the air more room to flow. Cool. So that's the most neck down portion of it. All right, so we finished up porting out the cylinder heads. I went over with a sanding wheel to get gets a decent finish on it. It's gonna run really well. So I typically run like 180 grit paper roll on the intake. On a carbureted vehicle, just to keep the fuel from forming droplets on the wall of the intake port. So it's a little bit rougher than the exhaust. The exhaust is actually probably a 380 grit finish, just trying to get air out.
Name of the game is just getting it out. Yep.
So next step is actually going over and cutting the seats, the valve seats.
Nice.
Put some angles on it.
Awesome, perfect. Let's go do that. It's the fanciest valve job on a Chinese 196cc head ever.
Pretty much.
All right, so Greg's got the seats cut for the valves on the cylinder head, so that's good to go. So we're gonna hand lap the valves in and get rid of those little high spots. So that'll be all smooth once everything's back together. After that, we're gonna mill the head and then make sure that it's flat. And then we're gonna measure the rod next. We're gonna get the side cover off and just see how much more we're gonna get, more compression we're gonna get out of this longer rod. And then that will determine how much we can take off the cylinder head. All right, so great news. The rod was the exact same length as the rod that came with the engine, so we didn't have to do anything crazy. So piston's gonna be where it was. Everything can go back together. We didn't have to clearance the cam. Sometimes you do with a billet rod where it swings around in between the lobes. It'll actually hit. This cam is junk. The plastic gear is junk. I'm not excited about it, but it's what we have. I didn't order a cam. I didn't order any other parts for this. It's literally just what I had sitting in a bucket at home, but we're gonna do some magic with some junk today, and it's gonna be awesome. At some point I might get back into this thing and do a cam and do some other little tiny parts, but for now I think it's just gonna be a ripper the way it is. All right, intake valves all lapped and good to go. So that sealed up just fine. Pass vac tests. We're gonna put the new springs and keepers and retainers on there. These are a double valve spring with a billet aluminum retainer. Just like that.
You'll never see that on YouTube on these motors.
Look at that finish. Absolutely flawless front to back. Little inclusion. This has nothing to do with our work. That's just porous casting, I think, what, right there? Yep. And there's probably one like right there. Yep. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see that type of stuff where when you have a perfectly smooth surface, you can see the inclusions and the casting errors and all that cool stuff.
That's cool.
She gon' chooch now.
All right, cylinder head is all clean, ready to go back on. So we got that. We're gonna put the dowels back in the head, put the head gasket on, get all this on, get this torqued down, and just kind of put this thing back together. We did put the billet flywheel back on with the offset keyway, so it will have a little bit more timing than it had before. And then once this thing's back in the bike, we just gotta find some gas and do our testing. So we'll see if we made it faster. Guarantee we did. if it runs. Through the magic of editing, the bike is back together. We have the new D-ring flange here, all hogged out to match Greg's super sweet port job. Now we're going to see if we can take the old pipe from the drift trike. We're gonna cut this thing up and do something, I don't know, like that. Can't really use it the way it originally was intended because that just doesn't make any sense. So we're gonna cut this and move it around, and I don't know, do something out here, back here, whatever. If this doesn't work, we got some conduit we can grab and hold our breath and weld. So yeah, doing that next.
Like that.
All right, so what do we got? We cut this pipe up. How's that gonna fit on there? So we got the flange, and got a little bit of that piece.
Like that.
And then we got a little bit of that piece, and so it's gonna come out in between these, and then we'll have the muffler like right here, and probably do some sort of a bracket just to keep it from.
Yeah, if we were awesome, we would.
Cool.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. I'll go grab the muffler. How's that fit?
Awesome. 2 cuts of the old exhaust, and it seems like.
Oh man, look at that. That's just perfect.
Yeah, so we'll cut
That's
the muffler
great.
up and.
Yeah, so we're gonna cut the back half of this off because it's obviously quite a bit smaller than the pipe here. So we'll cut that and just a little cherry bomb thing right on the end there. Probably do the little heat shield thing in, and then I don't even think it needs a brace, to be totally honest. It doesn't weigh enough.
She ain't going anywhere.
So, all right, and just like that, the exhaust is done, and back outside, it runs and idles. We started it up and set the idle, got the pipe on, got the muffler on, everything's ready to go. Let's see if she starts again. One lazy pull, and it fires right up. Look at that. So, all right, let's see if we made her any faster. We need the laptop. She needs a bit less fuel.
Well, yeah, I want to see. Does it run any different than choke on?
Worse.
Worse?
Yeah, so like, here's a little bit of choke. Oh, she took her blood sacrifice. All right, after first rip, she popped some bangs a little bit, so we're gonna go ahead and switch out the main jet. Super easy to do on these. Just pull the bolt off or pull the bowl off, I should say, off the bottom of the carb, and then just flat blade screwdriver in the main jet that I'm gonna drop on the ground here, and then this little guy goes back up in there, holds the pilot circuit in, and see what she does. I ran out of road 39 miles an hour,
39?
and it was still going. Oh, that crackle on the overrun is just the best thing ever. I love it. We accomplished everything that we sought out to do today. We used all the junk parts. They all went in. It starts and runs and idles, and the new top speed is 41, 42 miles an hour. It just flies.
Plenty.
This thing is ridiculous. It's already, I burned the F out of my leg on this side, and I burned my knee on this side. So yeah, the pipe's gonna have to get some wrap at some point. People are just gonna die and burn themselves, but this was awesome. This thing is awesome. It absolutely rips now. You really shouldn't be doing 42 miles an hour on something with no suspension and no brakes, which is why it's way more fun than anything else. So thank you so much for all your hard work
Hell yeah,
today.
dude.
That was awesome.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's it for this episode. If you like what you saw, make sure you give it a like. And if you like what you see here on Ruckus Garage, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for hanging out with us today.